Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for making yourself available for the next 30 minutes for me to go over some key monitoring concerns around Office 365 and its application set. Just a couple of seconds for housekeeping and introductions. First of all, my name is Andrew Parsons. I work for Blue Turtle Technologies in the Infrastructure, Cloud and Security Division. I'm a product manager and I look after most of the infrastructure performance monitoring tools, of which the 365 monitoring is one of them. If I could ask you all to please hold all your questions till the end. I think have Simone on the line. She will recognize the questions and I'll take them at the end. I've got quite a couple of slides to get through and I want you to get the most out of it, and it's fairly comprehensive. So without further ado, I think let's get started. Can you all, first of all, can you all see the screen in the presentation deck?
Yes.
Okay, great. So a couple of facts around Office 365 that I pulled from a couple of various sources across the internet, and some interesting facts. There are 33 million Office 365 subscribers worldwide, which I managed to get out of the Q2 of the Microsoft Financial Summary. Now, if you look at that alone and you just take 30% on top of that, given for the next 2 years, that's a fair amount of a fair user base. In terms of coverage, we are about 70% of Fortune 500 companies have purchased Office 365 in the last 12 months. That would be in 2021. One in every 5 corporate employees now use an Office 365 cloud-based service of some form or another. Office 365 is also the most widely used cloud service by user count. If you look at the statistics that came out from IDC late last year, 70% of small businesses have migrated to some kind of online cloud-based service. And they reckon 95%. I think in South Africa, we probably see the adverse of that, which is probably 75% mid-market business and about 95% corporate end user business. So some of those facts are quite astonishing. So what is the most important thing to think about when adopting, monitoring, and looking at online service-based platforms? First of all, the end user experience is the most important. Although 365 provides us productivity tools for enterprises, these tools don't really represent a true indication of what the end user experience is. Usually they report on it's either up or it's either down, but they miss the latency and things in between. If you think of the fact that Microsoft only delivers 99.97% for 365 services, although this is very high, it's that critical email that you want to get on a Friday afternoon that counts, that contains an order that needs to process, and that's usually when things go wrong. But more importantly, it's critical to understand that what your end users are experiencing, and allow them a continuous seamless experience through the online service. Another interesting fact came out of Wakefield research that 60% of issues in 365 are reported by first-time users. Because we have quite a big 365 offering within our Blue Turtle customer base, we're getting messages from the market that are related this slide relates to some of the top issues experienced by some of our customers that we get out of our support desks. A lot of them are complaining about OneDrive sync issues. In other words, the ability to upload a file or download a file, or even just gain access. Across Skype and Teams messaging, you get jitters or presentation decks that are not able to be presented on the screen from a user's perspective. More importantly, when you do software patches or updates, sometimes the applications break. You get delays in SharePoint from an uploading, downloading, and access perspective from your files. One of the critical ones, and I think this pertains to most businesses out there, is email service outages at critical times, which results in unexpected downtimes. On average, your support desk spends about 7 hours per week identifying and resolving issues just around these simple facts on the screen. One of the biggest problems from a Microsoft perspective is that they don't provide you any in-depth visibility into the platform. You've really only got 4 choices. Those 4 choices span across being able to access the status of the health service, which will only really tell you if there's an outage or if it's online. From an access perspective, you have the portal access, which will give you the ability to track the service health and availability. Then, other than that, you have the ability to be able to integrate your System Center pack with Office 365 via SCOM. And then the other option is to access the Microsoft 365 API management layer to programmatically manage services and bring those into your environment and do reporting around that. None of these really allow a customer or an end user to be able to understand exactly where the problem is. Most of these services are all ticked and they're either up or they're down, or they're running or they're not. It doesn't take into account things like what the user is experiencing in that particular point in time. So you can't really rely on Microsoft to report performance issues. What you can end up reporting on is just what you see on the screen from their dashboards. And you guys that are admins on the call will understand this. You will quite often get a message stating that OneDrive for Business is up and online, although some clients can't access the SharePoint service. Microsoft only really start to take cognizance of this when your team start to call in and start to report the issues. Some of the top challenges that we uncovered for Office 365 admins are because Microsoft 365 is a SaaS-based application. You very rarely or very difficulty have access to any of the back-end services running on the Microsoft cloud. So you really don't have any complete visibility to see what's happening on the cloud once the user actually hits that. So often access is distributed, which means that you typically have users in different geographic locations, maybe only complaining about access from one site, but the rest of the guys are able to work. Or you have problems on the local network or WAN, but the Microsoft portal will not be able to tell you this. It will really only just tell you that the service is up. So it's imperative to understand that customer user experience, and in terms of what is causing the slowness. Is it the network? Is it 365? Is it perhaps even just pertained back to the end user desktop? Performance problems can also occur during application code issues. For instance, if you're sharing code on SharePoint and it might hit a glitch and freeze up the system. The other most important thing from a monitoring perspective, you should not only just focus on performance monitoring, but rather on usage. This entails taking cognizance of license usage levels, how many mailboxes you have, how many emails are coming through, what's spam, what's not spam, because at the end of the day, this all affects whether you could experience an outage or not. And there's no way to physically do this if you don't have a unified view of the platform into one console end to end to understand and tie all this together. Three of the key areas that we see from a administrative perspective in terms of making sure that the 365 platform is stable and up and running, and that your users are getting good experience, is these three areas. And we do this via a couple of tiers involved. First of all, monitoring of the end user experience is critical. And I'll talk a little bit later about synthetic simulation and the real end user experience later on in the slide deck. But essentially, this allows admins to be able to detect problems before users do, because you programmatically and proactively keep checking the service with a list of functionality in the synthetic client to make sure it's up and running. You need to be able to monitor every tier, which involves supporting the 365 service, but more importantly, how the client is accessing it, whether they're accessing it from a desktop or a laptop or a mobile device, what the network connectivity is like from the client end all the way through the LAN and the WAN to the Microsoft service, as well as the status of the services and the infrastructure managed by Microsoft, which you would typically see in the portal of status or on or off. The monitoring the usage levels to determine possible problems as well also comes into account. If a set limit on the disk storage has been reached, for instance, on OneDrive, and the user is complaining, it's critical at the click of a button to be able to determine root cause analysis by monitoring license usage and usage levels into one console. But being able to tie this all together in a unified view is more important than anything else. What we from a Blue Turtle perspective, we decided to partner with a company a couple of years ago from an infrastructure monitoring perspective, because they provide a universal platform and a one pane looking glass into the environment to be able to visualize services end to end, including the topology maps of the service. The company is called EG Innovations, and they have extended their offerings right now into most of the online service provider stacks as well, but including your own infrastructure in the back end in that unified platform to pull all the services together. From a 365 perspective, not only do they monitor Office 365, but the 5 services that support that. The 5 services that support that being Exchange Online, your SharePoint, your Microsoft Teams, your OneDrive for Business, via one console, and that console can either be installed on premise or also on a SaaS-based deployment in the cloud. What EG Enterprise gives us is the ability to view Microsoft services from a 360 degree of visibility of Microsoft services. So, and as I mentioned on the previous slide before that, the three tiers that were involved, monitoring of every tier is important. Specifically, when we talk about every tier in the 365 services, clients accessing the 365 services, network connectivity across the LAN and the WAN. EG Innovations is a 100% web-based console with built-in monitoring dashboards and KPIs. We use a technology called synthetic client monitoring, which is really our end user client. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that, but what I'll do is I'll break it down in the next couple of slides into exactly what that means. We also leverage the Office 365 APIs to provide performance and usage metrics into the console. All the monitoring is also agentless. What EG Innovations does is it has a whole lot of pre-built templates that reside in the product and in the infrastructure to be able to dynamically baseline and provide visibility into the infrastructure that support Office 365 and report on diagnostics very quickly and easily from a one GUI screen. From a synthetic client perspective, we monitor 365 by asking the following questions across the services, and these are all really what the synthetic client really is. It's a GUI application that's built that resides on a client desktop with pre-built functionality in it that understands Microsoft Exchange, understands SharePoint, understands Teams. So you're not having to go away and code all of this. You actually it's a question of configuring what you want to check for and what you don't, and deploying that GUI or that client interface into your remote locations or into your central head office to play them back to be able to gather analytics around that. For Exchange Online, for instance, some of the key things that we do there, we check that emails have been sent and received. We check that users are able to access the online server and access their mailbox. And we provide reporting on each one of those tiers in terms of how long it took to execute the logon, how long it took to get the request back, how long it took to authenticate the password, etc., etc. From a SharePoint Online perspective, we check site connectivity. So whether the site is accessible or not, whether the users are able to upload or download files, and whether or not their credentials are correct. More importantly, and I think because this is widely used and adopted today, Microsoft Teams and Microsoft Skype are becoming critical to be monitored. Typically because the biggest problems there are either jitter on the lines, non-coherent type calls, material not being able to present it over the data channel, and things like that. Some of the things that we check there are precisely that. We check, for instance, core quality. We check for jitter, for latency, and we also check how many calls were initiated and how many were failed, just on a simple Teams meeting request, and provide analytics and feedback for that. From a OneDrive perspective, we also via the synthetic client check business site accessibility, as well as test operations as well, whether files are able to be uploaded, downloaded, and deleted. So general administration on OneDrive. As you can see from this, is just a reporting screen showing you all the Office 365 connectivity checks and the ability to monitor all the various components directly from one screen. Sorry, I'm just jumping around there. So at the top level, we provide insight into monitoring the Office 365 portal at the highest level. Basically, EG Innovations allows for Office 365 admins to continuously track the health of their critical services, such as 365, Skype for Business, OneDrive, your Teams, your Planner, etc., etc. So everything that pertains to Office 365, EG allows your administrators to track the health of those through one looking glass. We monitor license usage and stats, and get alerted when licenses are nearing expiry dates. We also get access to message center communications, which are easily viewed in terms of external links and usage levels. We measure network delays for connectivity across the 365 portal to help identify if it's a network issue that's affecting all the users or just one user or just different geographical areas. An example of the dashboard is what you're looking at now. It's we monitor all the services in real time, so it'll give you an identification of what's running and what's not running. We track the overall status of the portal, the connectivities, the service incidents, and average load times. And then, of course, more importantly, the trending. So how long does it take for a user to connect versus the connection status in terms of how long were they on that call and they had to reconnect. So all nicely represented into a one unified dashboard and view. We also have complete visibility of Exchange online, not only from an availability and performance perspective, but the actual usage there as well. From the EG platform, we're easy to get central visibility of the organization's 365 mail usage. We could track the amount and the size of the emails sent and received, how many emails were delivered, how many rejected, how many failed, how many were filtered as spam. We're able to provide optimized resource planning and track users which are accessing which mailboxes and which mailboxes have been inactive and archived, and which, more importantly, which ones have reached quota or their limits or not been able to access at all because they've been locked out. What I'm going to show you now is a synthetic example of the synthetic client monitor and how we access Exchange online and report that back to the EG console. It's really just a browser-based application that runs in an HTML browser. It looks exactly like an Outlook web access screen. Where the user initiates the transaction. They log on to Outlook by entering the logon credentials and details. This then reports back to the EG server. It checks the availability of and the configured email box that it's accessing. It then signs out and it reports all those metrics back to the EG Innovations console. As you can see there, that gives you the logon activity in percentage, the inbox folder activity, as well as the duration in seconds that are taken to execute each one of those transactions. The functionality doesn't stop here. You can actually add or build into the functionality of that synthetic client to do various other tasks, like, for instance, sending an email to the support desk and tracking that as a transaction to make sure that that's up and running as well. The nice thing is that because it's able to do dynamic baselining, you're not having to set those thresholds itself. And once it breaks that SLA, the administrators are notified immediately. So before your users even get a chance to complain, your administration has a chance to do root cause analysis and figure out what's going on before flooding the service desk with requests. We get deep visibility into SharePoint online services. So, for instance, we're able to monitor key SharePoint KPIs like service status, service incidents, health score, latencies, logon times, and tenant storages in OneDrive. We also leverage the real end user monitoring capabilities to identify the user experiences in real time. So, for instance, user logs on, uploads a file, closes his session, and logs out. All that's recorded and represented back into EG, that whole transaction scope. We allow you to remain compliant with audits and tracking. tracking files, page and folder activities, and get alerted to any unusual activity that's maybe not executed by a current user or is executed by a current user. We also give you visibility into SharePoint, site administration, synchronization, and the sharing and access operations. We monitor site collections and measure storage for usage so we can do intelligent capacity planning and be able to do forecasting based on the usage of the system going forward. So this slide is really just giving you a description of how the real end user monitoring works. Basically, it's also a HTML page that's built by your administrators, that's delivered to the end user, which has a number of functionality tests in it. Those functionality tests visually track the overall level of the user satisfaction. And measure it using an appendix score. What this allows us to do is replay that transaction in real time to identify the triage effect and round time of the transaction and where it went wrong, whether it's whether the slowdown or the break is due to a network or a server-side issue on server, on SharePoint Online, or whether or not it's maybe even as simple as just the front-end browser processing or the content download. So it measures the whole round trip of the transaction and allows us to do dynamic reporting and root cause analysis before the user even experiences any issues, because it's something that gets played systematically in the back end while at periodical times. And keeping track of it. Some of the key performance questions that customers have about SharePoint is, why is my SharePoint service slow? Are all the SharePoint services actually up and running? Which users are performing what activities? And it's important to monitor all this stuff to understand why there's a degradation in service. We're able to monitor SharePoint via the service status or the incidents or latencies and logon times. We're also able to get visibility into SharePoint site administration and synchronization. We're able to monitor the performance of Teams and Skype and Business online quite fluidly and quite systematically with detailed breakdowns. We perform systematic checks to proactively test call status, quality connectivity, and network performance. We monitor every Team and Skype and Business session in real time and identify poor audio and video quality, all relating to jitter network connectivity. We're able to issue alerts to call failures due to high jitter, packet loss, and degradation, all coming out of and reported from the console while monitoring the session. We monitor the network quality as well as the back end of that against a given set of KPIs and a given set of baselines and SLAs, which the system decides on based on the baselining. That's just a slide which is a representation of what you get out of a Teams core quality check from a synthetic monitoring perspective. And the synthetic client monitor, once again, would just be the client executing a team session in the back end, starting it up, replaying some voice through it, and then monitoring that process and shutting it down. You can see there we get things like packet loss rate, RTT latency, the initial, how many calls were initiated for the session, and in fact how long that session lasted and how many and how many completed calls were done as well. So it's quite comprehensive in terms of what we get, and this is all monitored from the end user perspective into your own infrastructure across the LAN and the WAN. We monitor all file operations in OneDrive, against which users perform them and when. We also find out which OneDrive sites have generated the most active files. We measure the content growth over time and track site administration, synchronization and sharing, and access request operations. We report on the number of active and inactive users, and we gain insights into many inactive orphan sites that exist, which is important from a security perspective to maintain your composture. Here's once again just another report screen on what the OneDrive connectivity looks like, and some of the reports coming out of that. From these screens, it actually gives you the ability, should that have broken SLA, say on the file detection time, to drill down right into that, right back down to the user that failed on. So the drill down, we have drill down capabilities directly from the console as well. We provide a lot of out-of-the-box reports for 365, the 365 service and the performance analytics. Using the intelligence and machine learning, EG Enterprise automatically isolates the root cause of any application performance within your 365 environment, because we've got unified view of everything that's going on. It's easy to identify an issue on the client side, whether it's browser-based, network slowness, or fault in 365, and we report on all of that. EG Enterprise also automatically, as I said, mentioned a few times before, automatically baselines the performance of your Microsoft services across locations and helps determine deviation in these expected performance paths. By taking advantage of the pre-built reports, we're able to gain actionable insights into historical trending. We're able to do proper capacity planning and load balancing across the services. Once again, just an example of the 365 health report and what comes out of the system. I'm not going to cover everything on this slide. I've been through most of them, but from a 365 performance and visibility perspective using EG Enterprise, we have insight into the Office portal, your Teams, Skype for Business, Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, and OneDrive for Business. So through one console, we have access to all the different shared services within the 365 platform. We'll share this deck with you guys afterwards, and that'll give you a breakdown of the previous slides that I've really covered. So what does EG deliver for 365 deployments? Well, first of all, we monitor the end user experience. We monitor every tool, every tier involved in supporting a 365 service, and we monitor level to determine root cause of problems. We also give you the ability to migrate to cloud with confidence by continuously monitoring all the phases of 365 migration. We monitor your pre-migration environment and establish dynamic baselines of what the performance looks like on-prem. During the migration, we compare baselines with what was on-prem compared to what has been migrated, and any deviations in those plan. And we continuously, post-migration, continuously implement continuous monitoring to detect and alert on abnormal patterns and performance trends. I think most importantly, we also track the bandwidth usage to measure the impact due to 365 on all internal services. A couple of the other components that are not listed in 365 that we look after performance monitoring in the Microsoft environment are .NET, Dynamics, your Azure infrastructure, Hyper-V, message queues, your terminal services, etc., etc. And I think this is the power of EG Innovations, because it gives us a unified platform view into all these different environments via one application or one console, if you will. Makes it a very, very, very strong offering in terms of 365 monitoring. I think that about wraps it up. Once again, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. And yeah, I'll take any questions now.
Hi, Andrew. There's one question from Philip, and he asks, how does the synthetic monitoring deal with multi-factor authentication?
Multi-factor authentication in terms of it first authenticating yourself on the network, and then authenticating yourself in 365 on your 365 platform. Philip,
just hold on.
Care to elaborate a little bit more on that?
Just need to unmute him 1 second.
Cool. Can I chat now?
Yeah, there we go.
No, I just meant like you're monitoring the logons. So yes. Obviously, if there's MFA enabled on that account, how would that monitoring system deal with the SMSs or the MFA tokens coming through?
I must be honest with you. I'll have to take that offline. I'm not too sure of that. I'll have to check it. From what I understand, though, because it's real end user experience, we can cater for that in the logon script when you're actually building the synthetic client that you're deploying to the user.
But yeah, I'll elaborate more on that because obviously you've got a couple of options. You can get a text message, or you can get a phone call, or you can get the app on your phone. So obviously we're encouraging the people to use the apps on our phones, but the bottom line is there's many people who just still insist on using SMSs. So the bottom line is that between the different service providers in South Africa, some of those SMSs just don't come through, or they take like 10 minutes to come through. So we need to monitor that. So I was just wondering, how would that synthetic monitoring agent take into consideration 3 or 4 different cell phone provider networks and monitor those texts or phone calls to see that they come through in a timeless manner?
Yeah, good question. That I don't have an answer for you on that one, but I will certainly come back to you.
Okay, thank you.